Be the right club. Be the right club today. Yes!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Be the Right Club Today podcast. Super excited about our next guest. He's our first non-golfer. He won 256 times in the major leagues, 3-time All-Star. He won 5 World Series, Mr. Andy Pettitte. Andy, welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Hal, Chase. It's good to be here.
Andy, how's your golf game? We know you're a great pitcher, but are you a really great golfer as well?
It's not real good right now. It's so funny. I mean, you feel like you kind of got something figured out, and then the next round it's just gone. And then it's a work in progress as always. I haven't played as much as I thought I would in retirement, but the last 3 or 4 months I've been trying to get out a little bit more, trying to play a little more weekly, once a week at least. And you know how it's crazy. I mean, I'll feel real good with my driver, and then just my irons will just be terrible, and just have a chance to hit the green in regulation, and feel like I'm a pretty good putter, and you feel like you should shoot a pretty good round, and then you just end up in the sand or whatever and bogey holes. And then the next round, I'm snap hooking balls out of bounds, and and I'm hitting irons good. So I'm sure you guys know, that's the story of y'all's lives, right? If hearing people say that and dealing with it and stuff like that. But it's fun. Love golf, but the game is not real tight right now. That's for sure.
It happens to all of us, Andy.
Andy, did you, segueing into kind of the parallels between golf and baseball, did you ever feel like, you obviously had days where your fastball was working better than your changeup or your curveball, but, basically the ups and downs of golf, did you feel that as a pitcher? Did you feel similar times where you had it going with certain types of pitches, and then the other ones, very rarely were you ever on with all 4 or 5 of your pitches?
Oh, for sure. I'll tell you guys, I mean, I played a lot of golf whenever I was pitching. Being a starting pitcher in the major leagues it's the greatest job in the world, I think, especially if you can have some success, and especially if you win. To have those 4 days off and to be able to go play golf and enjoy a big league W, as they say, is awesome. But I really believe there's a lot of correlations between golf and pitching, and I believe that when I was playing golf and playing it consistently, it really helped me on the mound. Just because, for me, golf is so much, feeling the putt, feeling your chips, and also especially putting for me is seeing your lines and seeing, maybe the putt before you even hit it. And when the more I was doing that, I felt like the easier it was for me to do it during the course of a baseball game also, I guess, because, you're practicing it so much and daily, like I said, I would play 2 rounds at least in between starts most of the time in my career. And I really feel like it helped me with the visualization side. I'm big on visualizing my pitches. And so really felt like that really helped me an awful lot. But of course, pitching, talking to you guys right before we came on here, the driver is working, and then my irons just are not where they want, where I want them to be. Every game that I started almost, that was kind of what I wade through during the course of an outing is what's effective today, what's working today, what do I have the best command of, and putting those together and to get big league hitters out. So that was always a balancing act, and very rarely do you make a start. For me, especially, I'm not sure how, I've talked to tons of pitchers, obviously, and it seems to be pretty, we all kind of right there on the same playing field. You don't, it's very rarely that you have every single pitch working for you that day. And, those are games, obviously, that you're a lot more under control, and, the game kind of rolls, right along for you. But, it's definitely, golf and baseball, and especially pitching, I feel like extremely similar.
So, Andy, you visualized the pitch before you ever threw the pitch?
I did. I did. You're kind of right. You stop and think about that, and you're like, okay, well, how are you doing all of that? How's all that going on so fast? But it's literally, I know as soon as I threw a pitch, I knew what I wanted to throw next. Just especially later in my career, my last 7-8 years of my career, I was really calling all my pitches. When you're a younger player, managers, the catchers are they're older than you, right? And they're like, hey, I've been around, buddy. I've been around a lot longer than you. Listen to me when I call something. I know these hitters and stuff like that. But there's so much tied into it as far as the commitment of a pitch. If you're the pitcher standing out there, you may know that the catcher or whoever is calling the game might have a great idea of what they're doing. But if they call a pitch and you just don't feel right about it, it's just not the right pitch to throw, because you're not going to be committed to it. So, you want to, the old saying, you'd rather throw a pitch that you're committed to and it be the wrong pitch, supposedly, than throw the right pitch that you're kind of like, oh, baby it, or, oh, I'm not real sure if I should throw this pitch, because that doesn't turn out any good either. So, yes, to answer your question, when I was going good, man, I was seeing, my fastball up and in with 2 strikes and beating a guy, whether I beat him with it, swing and a miss, or jamming him, or first pitch changeup with runners on second and third against a real aggressive hitter that I know is trying to get after my fastball, and seeing that changeup fading away to a righty and that ground ball going right to Derek Jeter at shortstop for a double play to get me out of an inning and stuff like that. So seeing all that stuff, I did it. I mean, my backdoor cutter, which was a lot of times a really tough pitch for me, because if a right-handed batter's in there, it's just kind of open space over there in that batter's box. Usually you'll pick out a spot to throw something to, So if a right-handed hitter is in there and I'm throwing it to an open area out there, you really have to see it and zone in on something on the catcher or a little spot where you have to start that, and it ends up right where you want it on the backdoor pitch to a right-handed hitter and stuff. So it took my game, my pitching to another level when I really, really started seeing my pitches and really focusing on visualization. And I would watch it even before my starts, 2 days before, just watching quality pitches over and over and over again. It's funny, anytime I do interviews like this and I start talking about it, I can still feel it. I mean, how you may feel the same way because you did it so many times. I can still go out. I do it with my kids every once in a while. I can go out on the mound right now at 50 almost, and it's just still there. The feel of it coming off of my fingers is still there to be able to make all my pitches kind of do what I want them to do. They're not as hard and they're not as sharp because I'm an old man now. So, but it's just crazy.
Well, I'll talk to you about old man. You're not quite yet, Andy, but anyway, it's really funny. Whenever I was able to see the shot, I usually could hit the shot. If I looked out there and I just couldn't identify what I wanted to do, I was kind of in that no man's land of committed to nothing and pretty much got nothing for it.
Yeah. And what's crazy is I'm an amateur as amateur could be golfer, right? And I really feel like that there's times, that I kind of get in that zone of golf where I was on the mound. It's nowhere to the magnitude, but there are times where I felt like, man, I'm seeing where I want this ball to start, talking about a golf ball and stuff like that. And, I don't know all the psychology behind it, but it's, there's just so much to being athletic. And I think repeating your swings and stuff like that. And it just your mind kind of makes your body do what it's telling you to get everything in the right position. I don't know if I'm kind of putting that all together the right way, but it's something pretty cool about it.
Well, and especially at like Hal's level and your level with baseball, once you've done the motion enough times, like then the mind starts to get in the right spot, and then a lot of times most of the time it becomes just this subconscious thing. And you talk about how like you throw a good pitch in the fourth or fifth inning, and a guy catches it just right and sends it over the left field wall, kind of like Hal through say 10 or 11 holes, hits a really good shot, and worst case scenario hits the flag stick, goes in the water. Like obviously both situations can get the golfer rattled, can get the pitcher rattled. How did you bring it back in? How did you kind of refocus? Was there, one of the questions that I wrote down for later on was like sports psychologists, performance coaches. Did you work with any of those? Did you have any breathing techniques? How did you recenter? The crowd's going wild. You're at the Red Sox stadium. He hits it over the big green monster. How did you bring it back in? What were some tricks that you used that some of our golfers could kind of apply the same stuff at, on the course?
So one thing you just mentioned, a huge part of what I was able to do to control myself and to help me was breathing. Yeah, literally breathing in through my nose and out my mouth was just a huge part of just what helped me just to be able to relax so much. Early in my career, not so much, right? It was extremely difficult to do that as a young player, to learn how to handle my emotions. Thank the Lord, I was fortunate enough to play for the New York Yankees, and I was thrown early in my career in a bunch of huge games where I had huge failure. My second year in the big league, I started game one of the World Series in 1996 against the Atlanta Braves, and got knocked out of the game in the third inning and got booed off the field, by my home crowd. And so, what better way to just learn and understand and deal with the emotions of, how to be successful. Now I've got to go and pitch game 5 in Atlanta, and in their ballpark now, where they just absolutely wore me out. How do you do that? And, I don't think there's any secret sauce to it, really. I mean, you have to have a short memory, right? You have to trust your preparation, and trust what you've done and all the work you've put in. And for me, that is really what I kind of lived on. Was I'm as prepared as I could possibly be. I've done everything physically, mentally that I could possibly do to be ready for this game, and then you've just done it so many times in the bullpen, in games prior to it. It's just clearing your mind and not letting anything distract you. And most of the time also, it's like I said, it's just not being tight, trying to get your body to be able to relax. And a lot of that had to do with breathing, and not being scared of the moment, which is hard for a lot of people to do. And, I say this all the time, and anytime I talk, I have to say it. My faith really played a whole lot of the reason why I feel like I was successful in my career. I mean, I wasn't a high draft pick. I mean, I wasn't a hard thrower. I didn't throw one pitch in my career fastball wise where I threw it, I said, here you go, hit it right down the middle. I mean, I just didn't. I mean, I think I, got up to 94 maybe occasionally in my career, but I pitched around the 88 to 91 miles an hour, so I was constantly trying to live on those edges and needed to be relaxed and relying on the movement and stuff like that. The game's changed an awful lot, where it's a lot more velocity and high fastballs and everyone trying to elevate and stuff like that. So, those are some of the things that I think about when you ask me that question of what helped me be able to relax and perform. And as I moved on in my career, obviously, when you start winning games and you start winning big postseason games, there became a kind of a feel late in my career, even though I would give up, I gave up runs and had games where I had some bad outings, but really, you start getting success and it starts rolling, and you kind of have an air about you. You kind of feel like, as humble as I could possibly be, but you're like, I'm not getting beat tonight. It has a lot to do also with my troops that I had around me too. If you could just minimize damage as a starting pitcher and not let your mind just go crazy out there, and maybe hold that 3 or 4 run inning to a 1 or 2 run inning and get out of that jam, get back out there and get in a little bit of a rhythm, get through that game a little bit more than you would have if you'd have lost it, in the 2nd or 3rd inning and had to throw 35 or 40 pitches to get through an inning. I knew that my troops around me, man, were ready to get after it, ready to play, and we're going to rally and score some runs and get us right back in games,
So, Andy, you said something that I want to go back on. You said you learned from failure. You said it because, you didn't pitch well when they threw you in there in 96 in the first game of the World Series or whatever. So I preach this all the time. I learned way more from my failures than I ever did from my successes. Could you expand, tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd say the first thing just immediately is the whole, I got to do that. I got to do this. I got to do that. As soon as Joe Torre, called me to the front of the airplane, we were flying home from Baltimore in 96. We had just clinched, the ALCS against Baltimore, and I'd just pitched game 5. And I was back there just kind of, my feet kicked up. I'm like, man, I'm going to be starting game 4 of the World Series or game 3. And, because we got these veteran guys, and I'm sure it's their turn to pitch. He's going to start them game 1. And he tells me, I want you to start game 1. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm starting game 1 of the World Series. We had David Cone and Jimmy Key, guys that were my kind of idols that I kind of looked up to as far as pitchers. And I'm thinking those dudes should be starting, I just got done pitching, So anyhow, it was immediately just a bad thought process for me. It was, I got to do this. I got to do that. I have to make sure, that I have a strong outing because our bullpen, is maybe, we don't want to shorten, those guys. We want to be able to use those guys. And that was a big, strong part of our team and stuff. So just literally just a bad process. Even I remember thinking, I want to pitch so good because I want the fans to be so happy, And when you start putting all of that stuff in your head and you start thinking about that, and literally, I don't even remember. And I literally felt like this the night after I pitched this game and the next day. I don't even remember what I had did. I didn't even remember the pitches that I was throwing that they were hitting. That's how bad my mind was just racing and thinking about everything else other than pitching. And so, usually I can tell you every pitch I threw during the course of a game. I really can. And especially, a big home run or a sequence that where I gave up a home run and knowing, that I didn't want to do that again, or make sure, realizing what the hitter was trying to do against me that first at bat, just made absolutely no adjustments during the course of that game. And so it was literally, I just remember that. I just remembered that, that if this thing is not working correctly and you're not slowing everything down and seeing what you want to see as far as going on. Now, I'm not talking about seeing around the field and seeing like that. If anybody's ever seen me pitch, my hat was pulled down and all I wanted to know was, in my mind, I knew who was in the batter's box, but then I just wanted to see my catcher's mitt and I wanted to see the spots on his body where I knew I was starting pitches at and stuff like that, and just being able to visualize and see stuff like that. And so, that would be the biggest thing that I would say that I had learned from it, was just immediately just realizing how to just be in the moment. And as soon as I take the mound, I needed to be ready to pitch. And there's nothing worse than going out and taking the mound and feeling like that you're trying to throw strikes. I wanted to be, but sometimes whenever the emotions were running too high and you're overthrowing stuff, your command's not where you want it to be. And what do? You fall behind, and then you're in a mode of trying to throw strikes. And that is no good when you're facing big league hitters. You know, again, I told you I'm not great off the cuff. I'm trying to think how that would maybe even, you know, correlate to golf, you know, but there's something about, you know, I was able to get in the pitcher's mode immediately than just, and because I was under control, handling my emotions and knowing exactly what I needed to do, other than just, you know, working off almost nervous energy for the first inning or two is what I did a lot of times early in my career.
So one of the things you just said there a minute ago is you pull your hat down, you only saw who was in the batter's box and then looking at a spot on the catcher or the mitt. So to put that into golf terms, I tried to reduce the size of my world. Whenever my mind was thinking about all the other things that were outside, you know, whether it was rough, water, whatever it was, you know, I couldn't get control of my emotions. But whenever I would just reduce the size of my world, think about nothing other than the shot I was fixing to hit, visualize where I was going to hit it. If I could get it down to that small, I could control my emotions. And I think that's kind of what you were just saying. Yeah, no, for sure. And again, yes. I mean, literally it's see it and you just feel it, you know, right. See, feel it. It's exactly what I felt like, because like I said, whether it was back then or it was even right now, after not pitching for the last 8 years, the years and years and years of just doing it, you know, I could still feel it, you know, I could still feel exactly what each pitch is supposed to feel like coming off of my fingertips.
Andy, it's amazing how similar what you described is what, you know, we felt like, our kids feel like, our listeners at home feel like in tournament play when it's going bad versus good. Like just the internal struggle that you have to, you know, you just kind of have to keep winning that battle. And I feel like my dad pitched in college, obviously not near the level you did. And he said the best feeling in the world was being on the mound, knowing the guy couldn't hit you. But the worst feeling in the world was being on the mound and knowing you didn't have control at all. And I feel like sometimes that's golf too. The best feeling in the world is knowing you can control the golf ball exactly how you want to. And the worst feeling is being out there and it's going all over the place and you don't know what to do. Yeah. One of the questions I have for you is, did you have, because golfers talk about all the time, man, I hit it great on the range and couldn't take it to the course, or I hit a terrible warm-up session, but I still played pretty well. Yeah. Did you have any, I mean, is there anything in baseball where guys joke about, you know, great warm-up sessions and couldn't get it into live action, or even terrible warm-up sessions and you went out and pitched your best game? Did you experience any of that?
All the time. And I, you know, I know a lot of guys do. And again, just it seemed like that's how it worked out, which is why I even talk, you know, coach high school baseball, a little small Christian school here in Houston. And I talk to my kids, you know, and we just started cranking up here, and each one of my pitchers has kind of been going out right now. I've talked to them about it. Hey, this does not even matter. You're getting loose. You're getting your mechanics, you know, kind of where you want to get them. You're starting to focus and get your mind where you need it to go. But this bullpen means absolutely nothing. And literally, I felt the exact same way. And I wish I would have learned that early in my career, because it would have saved me a lot of gray hairs, because I would warm up for a game and stuff wouldn't be working. And I would be like, what in the heck am I going to do? You know, like I got no changeup, or I got no cutter today. It's not working. And then all of a sudden you go out there and it may not be working in the first, you know, or it may not be working in the second, but you just figure out a way to get through it. So you know, again, the moral of the story is your warm-ups don't matter. You can't duplicate when you hit off that first tee box in a big, huge tournament, right? I mean, right. The warm-up, I mean, you just cannot get that adrenaline. You don't know what your body's going to do. I cannot duplicate once that hitter steps in that batter's box. I'm going to feel completely different than I just did in that warm-up. And so the only thing that matters is when you step on that first tee box and you hit that ball and you figure out where you're at after that first hole as far as your swing. And same as your pitching is you get out there, you figure out where your command is first and foremost, because everything really starts with, your fastball command. And a lot of times I would be all over the place in the pen, and I would get out there in the game and my focus would be there where I needed it to be. And I'd be locked in as far as my command of my fastball, what I wanted it to do.
So this is kind of along the lines of what you were just talking about. Mechanics are really pretty important in golf, but you can't take mechanics out there on every golf swing.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about mechanics while you were on the mound?
Well, you asked that, because obviously there's times where you're all over the place too. And you're like, what in the heck? I don't know what I'm doing, And so it's so hard to think about. If you were working on, let's say, your front side, getting it a little bit lower, because I was a real high front side guy with my front side when I would throw a pitch. To do that in a big league game when you're trying to compete is so hard. So the biggest thing that I always, would try to do when I would just try to make an adjustment is I would really just think about my lines, because I feel like pitching for me was so much angles, because I wasn't just throwing fastballs and right down the middle and elevating it and trying to beat people. I'm trying to create angles of how to get off the barrel of the bat. So in golf, we're trying to hit the sweet spot of the club, right? Well, as a pitcher, I'm trying to create the angle of missing the sweet spot on the baseball bat. It's probably about that big, And so I needed to hit off on this end or jam the guy, and the ball wouldn't be hit hard. And so I was trying to create those angles. And I always just thought about just trying to be smaller, trying to be tighter, trying to I had a tendency to get big. And I really feel like that coordinates a lot to my golf swing also. I have a tendency to get real big on my backswing and get long. And I feel like when that starts going crazy, not all the time, but I feel like sometimes it actually helps me when I think about shorten up, keep your head still, just little simple things. And that's kind of the things that I thought about when I would pitch, keep your head on line a little bit better on this pitch instead of kind of coming off, or pulling off line. Because as you're going down the mound, when you start creating, movement with your body and stuff like that, it makes the stuff get a little bit offline. So I really just tried to think about little simple things like that instead of thinking about big things, So those are things that I feel like really kind of helped me kind of get back in line. And it's crazy, because if you can kind of weather the storm, just like in golf, I'm sure how you weathered the storm, you can get through that third and fourth and you feel like, oh gosh, I'm about to get knocked out of the game. But then all of a sudden something clicks, all of a sudden you got a good feel for your changeup, and you're able to end up, you look up and you're in the 7th, 8th inning now all of a sudden. So it's such a mind game. It's such a mind battle. I mean, how as well as anybody, your mind is a powerful, powerful weapon. And boy, that thing, you got to keep it going and keeping it moving in the right direction and control the emotions also. I mean, obviously pitching is physical also. I know as a young player, I would come into dugouts a lot of times and I would be so mad and so angry and I would almost wear myself out as a young player in between innings, whether it was going up to the clubhouse and wrestling with the laundry basket or something, you start learning just to kind of come in and chill in between innings. Maybe after a bad shot, you might lose your cool walking down the fairway or whatever. But the more you go, the more you do it, you realize all that wasted energy is not going to help you when it comes down to, finishing the round off or pitching into the 6th, 7th, 8th inning. You become a lot smarter.
So I may ask the dumbest baseball question in the world, but I'll own it if I do. Okay. So
No.
Did your body lead your arm, or did your arm lead your body, or was it sometimes both?
I would say that I almost felt like my backside led almost everything, and my body, my front side was kind of just like my steering wheel, let's say, as pitchers would call it. And then everything would kind of fire off from the backside for me. That's kind of how I feel like pitching works, So it's literally just, for me, balance point, drive home, and your front shoulder's a steering wheel, and then the backside fires off. And I would just think about a whip. My arm was just a whip, nice and relaxed whip coming through. So didn't really think I had a whole lot of my front side involved. Obviously, you wanted I wanted a strong front side as far as keeping my arm up high. And like I said, I was kind of a high front shoulder guy. I know because so many hitters told me that was a big deception for me because I wasn't a hard thrower. But my 88, 89 guys told me kind of looked like 91, 92 because the way that my front side worked. And then all of a sudden the backside whipped through, and it kind of, you see all these arms, I guess, the arms moving. And as a hitter, you're seeing all that stuff coming at you.
I only ask that question because there's always the debate of the rotation of the body in the golf swing and how involved the arms are. And at times I felt like my body was leading my arms. And then at other times I felt like I had to slow my body down to let my arms get in front of me. And I just wondered if it related to baseball, your pitching in any sort of way.
Yeah, well, 100%. The way we're made pitchers wise, right? And to generate the velocity that we do, what you just said is exactly how we have to generate, right? So our lower half has to go and land, and then hopefully post up on that front leg. And then the velocity comes from the torque of my torso whipping around and coming around that front side of the hip. So it's really, it's definitely a lot. I mean, the correlation to pitching and hitting is very similar. I think how you tell me, Chase, y'all tell me, you're supposed to kind of stiffen up on that front leg as you're hitting your golf ball, right? And your body kind of comes around on the front side, or, around like that also.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some correlations in the way the weight moves and shifts and all that stuff. I would say that with golf, it's probably earlier. The transitions maybe a touch earlier, but it probably lasts longer too. Because we've got to stay in our tilts to get down to the ground, where baseball guys can stay and tilt back a little bit more or whatnot. But definitely, I mean, lots of good baseball players come in here. I mean, most of them fight slices because they never had to square up a club face. They just had to get the barrel of the bat on the ball, right? So the wrist angles are a little different, but the overall like kinetic sequence is all very, very, very similar. And it's interesting, like my background's in 3D, and the golfing world has been in on all the technology for a long time. And now I think the baseball world's starting to catch up a little bit. You guys are starting to look at more technology and looking at arm angles and to see people's propensity for injuries, right? Too much external or too much of this can cause, as Tommy John and all that stuff. But they're definitely overall similar movements, similar torques, similar ways to create power would be what I'd say. Quick follow up on the mechanics question, or the mechanics thought. You said your lead side gets too high. So let's say you're in the middle of the 6th or 7th inning, you're late in your outing, and you can feel yourself getting a little high. So you're going to get through that. You're going to get through that outing, and then you've got 4, 5, or 6 days before your next outing. Did you go about working on staying a little bit lower or trying to change the motion while you were in your off days? How did you get yourself back on track a little bit?
Yeah, so that would just be something that we'd work on, during our bullpens. That was a lot of times. The biggest thing that I really had to work on a lot of times for me was when I would go so high. Obviously, the shoulders and arms kind of work together, and as I went high, my arm went back and went lower, and which, sometimes I'll watch video and like I'm almost touching the dirt back behind me with the baseball, and of course when you're that long, it takes forever for your arm to catch up, right? So everything's up and away. So then you start thinking about shortening the backswing, right? For me, so shortening up my arm side, takeaway. And so that was really, I kind of said the front side, but most of the time when I fixed whenever I would fix that issue, it was more fixing my backside, so I wanted to time up my backside and not mess too much with my front side. So that was usually the adjustment that I had made. The front side for me was when I try to throw a certain pitch, inside fastball to right-handers. I would have a tendency to get quick because I felt like that if I went quick and pulled really hard, that then I'm really going to get that ball in there and drive it in there to a right-handed hitter. I'm a left-handed pitcher, right? And so I'm trying to, that's the hard side of the plate for me to command, because it's my glove side and I got to get all the way out there and get extension to get there. Arm side's usually real easy because it's just right there. You don't have to get quite as far and get out in front and over my front side quite as good. So it's really just, again, controlling my emotions and realizing that 88 timed up and me over my front side and mechanically right where I want to be is way better than 91 overthrown that, because my arm was a little late, leaks back over the middle of the plate. Home run, double in the gap, and so it's, again, controlling everything, breathing and relaxing, because I know that's a scary pitch. I know that when you go in there to that right-handed hitter, that if it's not good and it's not in, it's going to be damage, but you also know you have to pitch in as a big league pitcher, because if you just stay away, guys will just absolutely wear you out, so that was the biggest thing for me, was a lot of times just working on repetition, and it's just over and over and over and over, it's just getting the ball out of your glove and making sure you get it up. And then it's just like, if you have runners on base, I'm talking kind of, that was out of the windup. When runners are on base, if you try a slide step, which, if you have a guy that's going to steal on you or something like that, you got to be a little quicker. Then you got to get the ball out of your glove even faster and get it up. Or it's going to be late again, so that's why you see so many guys, a lot of people struggle with runners in scoring position and stuff like that. It's difficult. And that's why you see your elite pitchers, they're able to make big pitches in big situations. It's because they're able to control themselves and time everything up, where a lot of guys can't do it quite as successfully.
So I know you're on a tight schedule here, Andy. I want to ask you a question real quick. You've been retired for 8 years. Do you watch baseball at all?
I do. I enjoy watching it. I don't get to watch it like I thought I would, because I'm coaching. And so, but I enjoy watching it. I really try to watch a lot of college baseball. My kids, my second son, since I retired, my oldest son went to the University of Rice University and played at Baylor. He's out in the real world now working. My second son went to the University of Houston and played 1 year at Dallas Baptist. He's a pitcher, and he's in the Florida Marlins organization. He left on Saturday to go to spring training. And so, now I'm watching Dallas Baptist baseball because he was there last year and they went to a super regional. I know a bunch of kids on the team. And then my youngest son just committed to go to Dallas Baptist to play baseball as a two-way player, pitcher and a hitter. And so I'm trying to keep up with those teams and stuff like that. I'm still real involved with the Yankees, spend a lot of time, a lot of Zoom calls with a lot of their players, a lot of their pitching staff and stuff like that. I've got a great relationship with all those guys, and Aaron Boone and the staff and the Steinberg family has been wonderful to me. And so that's what I've been doing.
That's awesome. We really appreciate you being on, Andy. I know you're a busy man, and you're helping the youth at Second Baptist here in Houston and trying to make them be great citizens and followers of the Lord, and good baseball players on top of that.
I hope so. We're trying to get them right. That's for sure.
Yeah. We appreciate you being on Be the Right Club today.
You bet, man. God bless you guys. Y'all have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Andy.
Be the right club. Be the right club today. Yes!